The gaming world and the real world are different places, right? Well, not all of the time. Sometimes in video games, you end up places that, well, exist. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, 10 games where you explore real-world places. Starting off with number 10, it's Dead Island 2's Los Angeles. Recently, it seems like games have started to trend away from creating realistic environments based on reality. Games aren't often trying to recreate famous places and landmarks nowadays, so I guess this game had to pick up the slack. Zombie fiction is the perfect setting to drop you into a well-known location and give you carte blanche to commit some guilt-free mayhem, and Dead Island 2 has that in spades. Set in a zombie-infested version of LA that I'm not going to call Hell A, the first few areas take place in mostly fictionalized mansions in the Hollywood Hills, which are pretty accurate to the city in spirit, but none of this is based on anything in particular. Things do get more interesting for our purposes, at least, when you go to the Halperin Hotel, which is an obvious stand-in for the famous Beverly Hills Hotel. The layout is extremely accurate, most of the details are dead on, and what makes it especially interesting is that it isn't some open world thing where you're just looking at it from the outside. It's a fully modeled interior that's incredibly similar to its real-world counterpart. It's impressive, but the game's showpiece location is definitely Venice Beach. Which has been meticulously recreated down to the most exacting details. Obviously, real-world businesses had to be changed for legal purposes, but almost everything else about this area is spot on, from the road layouts to the boardwalk and beach. It's one of the most realistic city environments I've ever seen. It's not very big, it only covers a few blocks, but what is in the game is shockingly real, especially when you compare it to the real Venice Beach. And number 9 is Assassin's Creed Unity's Paris. Historical tourism is a large part of Assassin's Creed. It's the bread and butter, but for my money, they've never done it as well as Paris in Unity. Sure, the game's representation of the French Revolution is it's sloppy, but the city is remarkable. It's not perfect, a lot of the city's layout is anachronistic, and it's closer to how most people would know it today after Paris was renovated in the 1800s, but a lot of the city's monuments were recreated with a frankly absurd amount of detail.
J'espère qu'il ne va pas voir ma femme.
Même particulièrement hideux. C'est donc livraison à faire, moi.
Well, if it isn't the best barkeep in town.
I'll be ready for you.
You need some painting my take.
C'est donc livraison à faire, moi.
There is no better place to show that off than the Notre Dame Cathedral, which Ubisoft claims is a one-to-one recreation. That is to say, everything was recreated with nearly perfect accuracy, and it shows. Later games may look better than Unity, but the architectural design is the best the series ever got. Apparently, Ubisoft had a team just to work on the cathedral and spent 2 years rebuilding it, and that was it. That's all they did. It's not just exteriors that look this good either. The interiors of a lot of places in the game, where a lot of assassinations, quite frankly, take place, they're lush with detail as well. Pretty much every Paris landmark from the time is here and accounted for, with the old prison of the Bastille, the Pantheon, the Luxembourg Palace, and a lot more. They're all here, and they look amazing. And just as a little shout out, Unity's follow-up, Syndicate, lets you explore a lot more real-world locations in London rather than Paris, and it's a game that's also been highly praised for its accuracy. For me, though, Unity's just a little more impressive. And number 8 is Watch Dogs 2's San Francisco. Set in a condensed, slightly futuristic version of San Francisco in Silicon Valley, Watch Dogs 2 doesn't just have one of the most immersive cities out there, but it's also one of Ubisoft's best open-world games. What's so great about this game isn't that it does a great job recreating the city, it's that it puts the extra work into making it feel like it's alive. Sure, famous spots like the Palace of the Fine Arts, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Coit Tower, they're here and they look really accurate, but the game also populates the city with street performers, tourists, and even seals to give it this authentic vibe. It's not just a bunch of static structures, the city just feels like a living, breathing place. There's people everywhere, and the traffic's not as bad as in real life. That'll be a running theme of this list, by the way, but still, it's good. A lot of places you explore in this game are entirely fictional, but a lot of the businesses are at least based off real-life corporate offices and campuses.
No, for real? Oh, man, wait.
My favorite being Noodle, the game's stand-in for Google, which is as faux whimsical as the real Googleplex, actually. And yes, that's what the place is really called in real life, Googleplex. At number 7 is Kingdom Come Deliverance, Sassaw. I've played this game for years, but only now did I realize this game isn't just trying to be authentic in its recreation of medieval life. They put a ton of effort into making the map and places you visit also extremely accurate. Not shocking, but yeah, I just assumed the entire region, which was set in the Kingdom of Bohemia in the early 15th century, was mostly made up, but it's not. The region of Sassaw and Rattay they're real, completely real. They're made of castles and ruins that are still standing and look really similar to how they're depicted in the game. Rattay is especially accurate. The entire castle, hillside, main tower, it's all nearly identical. And it's an extremely impressive level of detail for what is otherwise a game made on a relatively low budget. It's not just the castle either that's realistic. The entire surrounding countryside is also recreated and looks impressively similar. That's not the only monument still standing in the area. The local monastery is also still around, and it looks like an almost 1-1 recreation as well. Kingdom Come gets some flack for how it chooses to present history, but the landscapes and landmarks, they're really, really good at standing up to scrutiny. At number 6 is Marvel's Spider-Man's New York City. A lot has been said about Insomniac's take on Spider-Man, and its sometimes nearly photorealistic version of New York City. And I'm gonna say more. Set entirely on the island of Manhattan, which is just a small portion of the whole city, the developers still shrunk down the island by a few blocks, and they were forced to make some changes because of licensing issues as well. That's the reason the Chrysler building isn't in the game, for example. The new owners wanted the devs to pay up for the privilege of including the building in the game, which Insomniac was like, no, what? We're not doing that. And good for them. Like, it's literally just like advertising for the most part. You get your building in the thing, and that helps you. You don't really help that. There's a few buildings like that, and some generic structures in between that don't match up with the real New York, but for the most part, everything's really detailed and very accurate. Grand Central Station, perfect example of the detail on display here. The entire outside of the station is fully modeled as well as the interior, and it's impressively accurate. The crowds probably would be a lot bigger, to be fair, but also that might be a little hectic and irritating to exist in Marvel's game, because it sure is in real life. Also, Spider-Man doesn't have to deal with cars at all, so they're just like, hey, you know what? Let's do the traffic for real. And man, they did. If you try to drive around in New York, it's a nightmare, just like it would be in this game. You don't have to drive around at all in this game, thankfully. So they're just like, yeah, enjoy New York's wall-to-wall gridlock. At this point, so many open world games have been set in New York City or an analog for it, but Spider-Man probably is the only one that's accurately modeled the traffic. At number 5, The Last of Us Part 2's Seattle. There is something wrong with the people at Naughty Dog. That's the only explanation for all the insane little details in this game and pretty much every other game they do. Seriously, look up some of the stuff. It's a little unnerving. Like, chill out, guys. Is all this stuff necessary? Apparently it is, because that's how we got this incredibly detailed and specific recreation of Seattle. Most of the game is spent in this city, so, I mean, you see a lot of it, and you'd be shocked to see just how much stuff in the game is nearly identical to how it appears in real life. I mean, outside of being set after the apocalypse, of course. If you're a Seattle resident, a lot of stuff in this game is going to stick out to you, like the Sorrento Hotel near the start of the game. It's eerily accurate both inside and outside. Most of the downtown area and the buildings, it's all very similar to its real-world counterparts. Later in the game, you go to Lumen Field, the football stadium, and if you look past all the stuff built on top of it, everything else is about the way the stadium is in real life. It's crazy accurate. The Seattle Aquarium is where they just lost it. The place is huge, meticulously detailed, and you end up exploring most of it. I could go on and talk about many, many, many locations that show up in the game, but I'd just basically be describing it. Everywhere you go seems to be based on something. It's hellbent in a way that few developers are.
God damn.
And number 4 is Ghostwire Tokyo's Shibuya. For once, there's a game set in the post-apocalypse or in some otherwise ruined version of a famous modern city. Well, you swap out ghosts with zombies and you get Ghostwire Tokyo. It does make a difference though. Instead of the blood and guts everywhere like your standard zombie game, Ghostwire's version of Tokyo is relatively unharmed and almost uncanny with how realistic it looks at times, mainly set around the real-life ward of Shibuya, the famous commerce center of the city. You've seen it in Jet Set Radio, you've seen it in various other Tokyo games. It starts off in the infamous Shibuya Scramble, one of the most chaotic intersections in the entire city. That's pretty much an iconic representation of life in Tokyo. You've seen it, period. Rather than being a one-to-one perfect recreation of the entire district, Ghostwire is a little more focused on getting the details right rather than the big picture. Things like signage, street signs, phones, it's all perfectly recreated. Even if the actual city layout tends to deviate from reality a bit, buildings like the Central Hospital, the metro station, they're nearly identical to their real-life counterparts. Both the inside and outside, might I add. They don't always perfectly match up, but the details are crazy. And frankly, we are seeing rights issues come up a fair amount here. That could be part of it as well. But Ghostwire's version of Tokyo is carefully researched and realistic above and beyond basically anything else out there. And number 3 is L.A. Noire, set in post-World War II L.A. This game doesn't just accurately recreate the city from that time. They've gone through and recreated everything down to the smallest detail. What makes L.A. Noire stand out even today, where its once cutting-edge graphics come off as weird and kind of ugly, is this attention to detail. The insides of houses and apartments have been created using reference photos from the time, but it doesn't stop there. Every random thing from radios to newspapers, it's all been carefully sourced and remade. Things that you'd never think of, like government documents and how ledgers were done at the time. It's all realistically recreated. If you're the type of person who just finds how people used to do things interesting, if you really care about all the procedural stuff, L.A. Noire is one of the most fascinating games of all time. The little details are impressive, but the city itself is heavily researched as well. They even used old public works documents to accurately recreate the layout of the roads. One thing I really appreciate about this game is how many interiors you go into. Like famous landmarks like Union Station, you actually can go in them, and the interiors are just as period accurate as the exterior. The visuals, I mean, they're a little flat and washed out now, but there's clearly a ton of attention paid to the accuracy in L.A. Noire, and that's what made it one of the most interesting open worlds to explore, even if actually getting around can be a bit of a pain in the ass. I mean, it's L.A.
An hour later, she shows. Hair still smoking, clothes smoldering, smelling like a brush fire.
At number 2 is The Division 2. Massive Entertainment, the Ubisoft developer in charge of this one, gave themselves a seemingly impossible goal of creating a one-to-one representation of the nation's capital. Now, it is post-apocalyptic, and a lot of buildings had to be changed for licensing and security reasons, blah, 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 but look at the results. This game actually only takes place in a small part of the capital. It doesn't even really cover a big area. It's a division of DC. But man, is that division ever detailed. Everything from the shape of the roads, the walking paths, the guardrails, it's all extremely accurate to real life. Buildings were of course carefully recreated. You got the White House, the Capitol building, the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool. All these places aren't just highly detailed, they're also accurately placed, so it's really easy to take a reference photo and match it up to the place in the game world. It's pretty much one-to-one. It's almost there. You know, outside of the apocalypse part. Apparently, the devs conducted extensive research trips to gather information about the city, and it really shows in the final product. It's an easy breeze past all this stuff when you're actually playing it, but the detail you get in this is just insane. If you ever wanted to check out Washington, D.C., but don't want to deal with the really confusing roads, and as somebody who's been there quite a few times, I can attest it's lunacy, just play the game. Play Division 2. At At number 1 is Flight Simulator 2020, your hometown. Most games with real-world locations give you the opportunity to explore famous cities, and yeah, Flight Simulator 2020 also has that. There's one thing this game has that nothing else does, though, and it's your hometown. When you pop into a video game, you're usually jetting off to picturesque places and huge cities that most people know and would be very interested in seeing, but sometimes you just want to go somewhere familiar, and for most people, that's not going to happen in a game. I don't think Grand Theft Auto's next adventure is going to be set in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or like Laredo, Texas, or Denver. Denver's even kind of big, and I don't see there ever being a Denver game, a real one anyway. Most places, they just don't get a chance to get spotlighted in a game, except for in Flight Simulator, where the whole world is it's right there. It's not going to be as detailed as London or Hong Kong or any of the places that, of course, they're going to spend time on, but it's pretty likely that there's map data where you live, and it's probably pretty accurate. It might be kind of blurry and ugly, and the roads might not be completely correct because there might be construction or something got updated or blah blah blah, but the overall layout is the same as in real life. So you might actually be able to follow the roads and find your old school, maybe even your old house. In other parts of the world where Bing Maps aren't very good about scanning, the map data gets a lot more spotty, unfortunately. Still, this is a game that literally has the whole world, so there's always something to see, even if it's only from 13,000 feet up that it looks like something. It's not always the best looking game, but if you want real, it doesn't get more realistic than Flight Simulator 2020. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.